Have you ever wondered why bad guys always seem to capture women's hearts so effortlessly, while good, sincere men are often seen as just the nice friend? It feels unfair, doesn't it? But the truth is, this isn't random. Behind those seemingly irrational choices lies an entire psychological system, where emotions, instincts, and stimulation intertwine to create what we call dangerous attraction. This video isn't about changing your kind nature. It's about understanding how the emotional game truly works and how to use it without losing yourself. Because if you don't understand this rule, you'll keep asking yourself, why did she leave me for the guy who makes her cry every night? But once you do understand, you'll realize women aren't drawn to cruelty. They're drawn to the strong, confident, and unpredictable energy that those so-called jerks accidentally give off. So, how can you stay a good man, yet still make women feel deeply attracted to you? Let's peel back the psychological layers behind this phenomenon. In love, what often captivates us isn't the person themselves, but the feeling of unpredictability they bring. There are relationships that exhaust women, yet they can't walk away not because they're weak, but because their brains have been programmed to crave that emotional roller coaster. That's the power of a psychological mechanism known as intermittent reinforcement, or in simpler terms, addiction to unpredictable rewards. In classic behavioral psychology experiments, scientist B.F. Skinner showed that when rewards appear irregularly and unpredictably, the brain releases more dopamine than when rewards come consistently. The feeling of not knowing when you'll get it makes people addicted to the anticipation itself, even more than the outcome. This mechanism explains why gamblers can't stop playing even when they're losing. Every almost win triggers a surge of dopamine, sometimes stronger than an actual win. In love, the same thing happens. When a man is emotionally inconsistent, warm today, cold tomorrow, affectionate one moment, then suddenly distant, he unknowingly activates this mechanism in a woman's mind. She starts living in a state of waiting, guessing, and hoping. Every replied text, every fleeting smile, becomes a small reward that makes her heart race, and gradually, she's no longer addicted to him, but to the feeling of guessing right when the reward appears. It sounds cruel, but that's how the brain works. When someone is too easy to get, dopamine doesn't rise, emotions stay flat. But when she has to wait, feel uncertain, and work for attention, her brain interprets it as something valuable, worth desiring. And so, emotional chaos is mistaken for passion. Women in those situations aren't stupid. They're simply trapped in a chemical game orchestrated by the brain. The less certain she is about what he's thinking, the more she feels the urge to prove her worth. The more abandoned she feels, the more she asks herself, what did I do wrong? And every time he comes back, even with just a single message, her brain releases a storm of dopamine like an addict getting a fix. That's why so many women say, I know he's bad for me, but I just can't stop. Because they're not addicted to the man, they're addicted to the rush of unpredictability he brings. It's a biological loop that only deep awareness and emotional self-recognition can break. And this is what men need to understand deeply. Don't confuse attraction with manipulation. A man can stay on a woman's mind all day not because he plays silent games, but because he has depth, genuine emotion, and knows when to give and when to hold back. True attraction doesn't come from being hot and cold, it comes from calmness, mystery, and confidence enough to make her want to discover more, but not enough to make her suffer. Once you understand the mechanism of intermittent reinforcement, one truth becomes clear. You don't have to act like a jerk to be attractive. You just need to stop giving yourself away too easily, and learn how to make others feel that you have value not because you're distant, but because you have standards. In the end, what makes women truly captivated isn't instability, it's the magnetic energy of a man who knows who he is, knows what he wants, and never loses control in this emotional game. After understanding intermittent reinforcement, the mechanism that makes humans addicted to unpredictability, we begin to see a deeper layer of the issue. Because if behavioral psychology explains how the brain reacts to random rewards, evolutionary psychology reveals why women are especially drawn to confident, assertive, and sometimes difficult men. To truly understand this phenomenon, we must look back tens of thousands of years into human evolution where survival instincts still quietly govern the modern human heart. In prehistoric times, women didn't just seek love, they sought safety. when the world was wild, dangerous, and scarce. Survival depended heavily on the man they bonded with. The strong, confident, and decisive man, the one who dared to lead, had a higher chance of protecting and reproducing. That's why signals of dominance, confidence, and decisiveness gradually became instinctive markers of attraction. Evolutionary psychologist David M. Buss, author of The Evolution of Desire, once wrote, "Our desires are not random. They are the products of millions of years of selection." In other words, the traits that make women's hearts race today, strength, control, calm confidence, aren't just emotions, they're evolutionary heritage. The human brain hasn't updated fast enough to match civilization. Even though the modern world runs on law, finance, and technology, the brain still reacts to the same primal signals from the hunting and gathering era. A man with a deep voice, steady posture, and determined gaze is immediately classified by the subconscious as safe, capable of protection. However, problems arise when the world changes, but instincts remain the same. In the modern age, physical strength is no longer the key determinant. Emotional strength and leadership are what truly define a strong man. But since the brain still operates on its ancient model, many women unconsciously mistake false displays of dominance, coldness, arrogance, or control for real strength. They don't realize that those signals are often just the outer shell of deep insecurity. Biologist Charles Darwin, in The Descent of Man, pointed out something fascinating. The instinct of self-preservation and of sexual selection are closely allied. This means that we love not only out of emotion, but for the survival of our species, and because of that, women often evaluate men based on one core question. Is he someone who can lead, or someone who needs to be led? Unfortunately, many men today confuse confidence with dominance, calmness with coldness, and determination with control. They imitate the surface image of the bad boy, thinking that's power when in reality, it's just a cheap copy of the alpha instinct. Because real confidence doesn't need to prove itself, doesn't need to shout, and doesn't need to control anyone. It radiates naturally from self-mastery, emotional intelligence, and consistency in action. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot command himself will always be a servant." A truly confident man doesn't need to play power games because he already commands himself. He doesn't need to make women afraid to feel valuable. He earns their respect through calmness, steadiness, and keeping his word. He can be cold, but never cruel, strong, but never aggressive, a leader, but never a controller. And that is the next stage of male evolution, no longer the primitive hunter, but the emotional leader who radiates the energy of mature confidence. Once you understand this, you'll stop trying to act like a bad boy, because you'll realize women don't want bad men, they want strong men. A man's true attractiveness, in the end, doesn't lie in a display of dominance, but in his ability to make others feel safe around him, an evolutionary legacy redefined for the modern age. When we understand the evolutionary perspective, we see why women are drawn to strength and confidence. But not every choice comes from instinct or survival. Sometimes, it's the emotional wounds from childhood that quietly steer their hearts subtle, enduring, and hard to detect. Because humans don't just love through instinct. We also love through the memory of the first love we ever experienced. From a young age, each person learns how to love through the way their parents or caregivers respond to their emotions. If love came inconsistently, sometimes present, sometimes absent, or given conditionally like "I love you only when you're good," then the brain learns to associate love with anxiety and effort to earn acceptance. And as adults, we unconsciously seek that same kind of love again even when it hurts us. Psychologist John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, once wrote, "The internal working model of love is formed in childhood and governs how we seek closeness as adults. That's why many women who grew up in emotionally chaotic environments often find themselves drawn to equally chaotic men. When a man becomes silent, they feel anxious, yet they interpret it as a test of love. When treated coldly, they still can't walk away, because deep down, that sense of insecurity feels familiar. They mistake intensity for love, and unconsciously repeat the same pattern, loving those who hurt them, then wondering why it keeps happening. But the truth is, we don't seek love, we seek what's familiar. The brain always labels familiarity as safety, even when it causes us pain. That's why so many people keep choosing the same type of person, the same cold, distant kind, even after swearing, "I'll never do this again." And this is the key for men to understand women more deeply. Women don't always react with logic. They react with emotional memory. A man who understands this won't judge or blame her. Instead, he learns to become a new source of safety for her. He doesn't need to heal her. He just needs to be steady, consistent, and not get pulled into her chaos. Because ultimately, women don't fall in love with the perfect man. They fall in love with the man who makes them feel peaceful. And when you're the first man to give her that feeling, you don't just win her heart, you help her break free from her past. Once we understand that many women are drawn to chaotic relationships because of subconscious childhood patterns, we begin to see another paradox in human psychology. We tend to desire what's hard to get and undervalue what comes too easily. Whether it's love or success, the sense of having to work for something always makes it feel more meaningful. And that's the essence of the challenge principle. In human behavior, there's a timeless rule. Value is proportional to rarity. Our minds instinctively assume that what's difficult to obtain must be more valuable. That's why, when a man is too available, too accommodating, always ready to please, a woman's subconscious automatically categorizes him as low value. She doesn't deliberately disrespect him. It's simply how instinct works. Psychologist Robert Cialdini, in Influence. The Psychology of Persuasion once stated, "People assign more value to opportunities when they are less available." This explains why challenge and attraction are so closely linked. A man who isn't easy to read, who doesn't rush to show emotion, who doesn't need to do everything to impress, he is the one who makes a woman think, wait, and wonder, what is he thinking? Does he really like me? And during that process, her brain begins to invest emotionally. Conversely, a man who's always available, constantly compliments her, and always texts first believes he's showing care, but in reality, he's taking away her sense of having to earn it. And once there's no challenge left, emotions start to fade not because she's ungrateful, but because the human brain loses interest in what's certain. However, challenge does not mean pretending to be cold or playing mind games. True challenge comes from inner value and personal boundaries. A man who knows what he wants, who can say no at the right time, and who can remain silent when necessary. That's the kind of man who radiates confidence and strength. Philosopher Jordan Peterson once said, "If you want to be attractive, you must be dangerous but voluntarily so. Such a man doesn't need to prove himself. He stays just distant enough to be respected, yet close enough to make a woman feel safe. He doesn't play half measures, but he also doesn't give everything away from the start. It's that balance between accessible but not easy that creates lasting attraction. Because in love, just like in every other area of life, value always comes from effort. If you want to be appreciated, don't try to please become a worthy challenge. Someone others have to make an effort to reach, and feel lucky to keep once they do. After understanding the challenge principle, we realize that women aren't truly attracted to manipulation or coldness, but to the confident, strong, and clear energy that a man naturally emits. But this is also where most good men lose their way. They believe that to be loved, they must completely change, become distant, careless, or emotionally numb. In truth, that's the biggest mistake. Real attraction doesn't come from turning into a bad boy, but from becoming a man who is self-controlled, principled, and aware of his own value. Women don't want to be treated badly. No one wants to be ignored, hurt, or disrespected. What truly attracts them is the blend of safety and excitement that a confident man creates. The so-called bad boy only accidentally triggers that feeling by appearing strong, expressive, and free from the need for approval. But where they go wrong is in confusing confidence with arrogance, control, and emotional manipulation, things that create only temporary attraction. Philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty." And that is the difference between a fake bad boy and a truly mature man. A mature man doesn't need to make women afraid to prove his strength. He earns their respect through calmness, discipline, and emotional control. He knows when to move forward, when to step back, and never loses himself just to be loved. A good man doesn't need to change his kind or gentle nature. He only needs to add boundaries and clarity. When you have boundaries, you no longer fear losing someone because you understand that losing the wrong person was never a loss. That quiet confidence is incredibly magnetic because it comes from within, from stability, self-mastery, and emotional maturity. Psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." When men understand this, they'll stop forcing themselves to become jerks just to seem attractive. Because true attraction doesn't come from causing pain, it comes from the ability to make someone feel peaceful and still deeply drawn to you. In the end, the greatest lesson is this: never trade your kindness for attention. Keep your good heart, but add strength and boundaries. When you know who you are, you'll never need to pretend to be cold, because your calmness, confidence, and authenticity are already what make women unable to look away. If this video helped you understand women and yourself on a deeper level, remember this is only the beginning of your journey to becoming a confident, grounded, and truly magnetic man. Hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss the next videos where I'll continue helping you understand female psychology, avoid dating pitfalls, and develop the mindset of an emotionally mature man. Let every week, every video on this channel become a mirror that helps you upgrade into the best version of yourself. Because when you change the way you understand, you change the entire game. See you in the next video, and remember, be the man women respect, not the one they pity.